So, welcome to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Of course, the first hour didn't happen today because Dr. Tim's on vacation. But today is Friday, June the 13th, 2025. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael. We have something special we're going to do today.
Welcome. Delighted that everybody's here and that we get to engage in this conversation. The last few days, we talked a little bit about the session that we did with Susan Bingham's support group on ending war. And I thought we'd try something different today. And we had actually gotten a video from Susan Bingham of that conversation. And I thought we might just try playing sections of it and see where the conversation goes. However, if you're in the chat room and you have a thought for us, Susan, you could hit that mic before we start that and say hello. And I have this sweet little face of Lincoln just waking up and looking at me and saying hello.
Yeah, I'm here today, just being present and seeing what gets revealed, doing my own work. And so, yeah, but let's see what magic gets revealed through the process today.
Sweet. All right. Well, Miss Jeannie, do you want to go ahead and start that video and we'll see who joins and where the conversation goes?
Can I start with a comment, Michael?
Oh, please.
I was thinking that it's confusing to start off with the book of Job and the quote that what I fear the most has happened, because the beginning of Job, there's a dialogue between God and the devil, and the onset of problems that Job has is because God allows the devil to do those things, because God says Job will be able to withstand anything the devil could throw at him. So I was thinking that maybe you could quote that saying, what I fear most has happened, without attributing it to Job, because of the origin of it. Job's troubles appears to have come from a dialogue between God and the devil.
Well, so my thought in that regard would be, when you read that text, it actually doesn't mention the devil. It mentions Satan. And in the Aramaic language, Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. It's a product of something going on within the human mind. When you tie that together with the Creator says, tell me what you want, ask and you will receive. You hear the Creator saying, for the works of my hands command ye me. Tell me what to do, God says. So if that's accurate in Aramaic, that Satan is the past in the mind of man, and it is what misleads us, and we are functioning out of that pathological state, i.e. fear and dread, I would offer our pathology, then for me, that makes Job's insight just so gigantic. Oh, it's my own mental disorder. It's my own pathology that's created this result. And what I need to do is resolve my pathology.
I think the problem is that many people who read your paper won't have that same reaction to God and Satan. They will think of it as the objective reality of God and Satan. And the onset of problems with Job is as a result of that dialogue. And it's just confusing right at the outset to have that to be a quote to Job. I was thinking if you could somehow skip over Job.
Or explain what you just said.
Yeah, the question, I really appreciate the question, Tim, because that assists me to see a different perspective than the one I have, and I will clarify that, because I think it really is a theological point that is missing in our culture. And when it comes in, yes, there's going to be confusion when one starts to see, oh, my pathology is directing God.
Mm-hmm.
God said, of the works of my hands, command ye me. And if Job has, as he came to this insight, that which I feared most, I set this up. And I gave a command to the Creator who said, command ye me, tell me what you want. And what is Job's fear? The whole book starts out with a story about what his fear is. He's this good and upright person, but then he's got this fear that his children are not as good and upright as he, and that they're going to blow it. And it makes the point that this is a regular thing for him to do, like it's a daily occurrence for him to lament about the possibility that his children aren't going to be as good and upright as he is.
But it's not an awful lot to take on at the beginning.
Beginning of what?
Well,
The paper.
Of the paper.
if we're going to end war, yeah, we're going to have to take on a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, my take is when I apply that idea of pathology to Job's thinking, is that war is a pathology, and it's been accepted for so many thousands of years by so many millions of people. And I'll tell you, there's going to be a whole lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and a whole lot of confusion. People start to actually step into the place of blame. My belief in war, my thinking that this is what's going to protect me and save me from those evil ones out there, the ones that I blame for what's going on inside of me, there's going to be a lot of processing to be done if people
Right.
get to the truth. I mean, it's been going on for the planet for so long and been so accepted and honored and revered. And I certainly honor those who've gone and served for what they've given. I mean, it's outrageous what they've had to do. And
Yeah.
the truth is they're working for a pathology.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote in one of Lillian DeWater's books. She says, if no one on earth believed in evil, do you think it would exist? And then she gives a little story about how it could have first started. And it was like a trick to scare someone. And then that person was like, oh my God, there's something evil there, you know, and then it spread and they all witnessed it, but it was all just like a deception. It wasn't even real, but everyone began to believe like in evil. Like you could see how that could start something, and then it just mushrooms out and everyone starts believing in something that's not even real.
Mhm. You know, Michael, it is a lot to start with, but on the other hand, what you just said, that is the central point and crux of the problem. And then you go on and explain the solution, which is the use of the tools in however we do it. Yeah, I think you've got to put that, because that's a great example. The Job thing.
Well, it's a powerful and detailed insight into how his tragedies occur. And it's interesting, I was actually, after I read your edit of my paper, I went back and reread some of the recovery phase of Job. And it's interesting because he has this interaction with all of his friends, questioning God. His friends are questioning God and questioning what was Job's sin, and on it goes. And the resolution comes when he decides to activate him, your sister's name. Theologically, Rakhma was not, at least as far as I know, not put forward as a major solution in the world until Yeshua came up with it. And they asked him that question, what's most important in the law? He says, when you think of a creator, when you think of neighbor, you must maintain this condition called Rakhma. And if that condition is in your mind, then the gateway for your human life, love, is open, and it will be present in your physiology. So if you think of neighbor in Aramaic, neighbor means anybody that you think about. So if you think of Hitler or Stalin or whoever we could put on that list today. If you can maintain Rakhma, then you are part of the solution. If you can't maintain Rakhma, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah,
If you go into some form of hostility or fear. So the resolution that he comes up with, and again, thank you for editing the paper, Susan, because it opened some other questions for me. You go back and you read his resolution. He goes through all of this with his friends, and then he decides, and this is the moment at which the shift occurs, that he's going to pray for his friends. Now, that doesn't make any sense in this culture. Like, why would that resolve his problems? Because we believe that prayer is putting words in the cosmic gift catalog. That's taught by and large. But if you go to the Aramaic definition of the word prayer, prayer means literally in Aramaic to set a trap for God. You know, John talks about a lot about presence. When I hear John say that, what I hear John saying is he is in prayer. He is becoming the space where the active presence of love shows up in his physiology and in his life. That's prayer in Aramaic. Prayer's petition is, God, here's my list for today. This is what you should be doing. That's not prayer, that's petition. So what really stood out to me when I reread that this morning, what was the whole resolution became his connecting with active presence, his reconnecting with God by holding the space for his friends. Like, you know, he had a few little questions for his friends. He was questioning their sanity and, you know, their intelligence as he went through that whole process. They accused him and said, but when he returns to that condition of Rakhma and love literally entered his physiology, his pathology heals, and his whole life turns around. To me, that's the point of Job. And to me, that's the crux of what every person on the planet who believes war is rah, rah, yay, what protects me. That's what every person who believes that is going to have to experience if they're ever going to get a change. And there's going to be a whole lot of healing crises to go through. And remember the symptoms of healing. On a physical level, healing looks like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had in low energy. On a mental level, looks like any kind of negative thought you've ever had in confusion. And on an emotional level, looks like any kind of negative feeling you've ever had in depression. That's what people are going to go through if they are going to heal support the energetic dynamic of war in them. If we ever want to rid the earth of that scourge, that's what's going to have to happen.
Okay. I think you said stop it for a moment.
Yes, and just for those who have just joined, we decided to do a little experiment and see how playing the video that we've talked about the last couple of days from Susan's gathering on Wednesday on ending war. And so this seems like a good stopping point. As I say, I'm just kind of doing an experiment to see listening to that video and then what it resonates for people and what kind of conversation opens up. So does that make sense for everybody, what we said so far and what we're doing with that? Do you have any thoughts? Please push that
I have a
microphone
thought.
button. Yes, please.
Definitely have a thought. So, it's perfect timing for that to just be articulated in words, because I got just some really deep clarity of what it really means to be in love. You know, we hear that word that I'm in love with so-and-so, or I'm in love. It's really to be in the resonance of love and being marinated that it's a part of me emanating out. And so when in that discussion, when you were talking about, you know, setting a trap for God, and it's aligning our antennas to be in the actual frequency of love. And when our structure is open to receive that and allow that expression, only the highest truth can be revealed. And if we link it to war, and as we know, it's an inner journey of removing all the pathology that's in the way of the expression of the truth. So it obviously requires us to be vigilant of that and knowing when the false self is taking over. So that, yeah, it just resonated. It just confirmed exactly what is being revealed to me as I move into more and more into presence. So yeah, just deepest of gratitude for that. It cemented it clearly.
Awesome. Well, one of the thoughts that comes to me is how that I hadn't thought of as we were doing this recording on Wednesday was how this ties in with another related but seemingly unrelated command, and that is the one that we're told. Yeah, the command was honor thy father and thy mother.
Mhm.
And over the years, I've had people who had really traumatic relationships with their parents as power persons and were just like in rage and in real resistance to how stupid it is that I should honor my father and my mother. And yet, like this command to have Rakhma, when you think of the creator, when you think of neighbor, it's got nothing to do with the creator and the neighbor. It's about how we maintain our own human lives. And the brilliance of the command that said, honor thy father and thy mother. And it's interesting how the two correlate. Have Rakhma for the creator neighbor is, and neighbor being anybody you think about, is basically that's a way to protect your own mind from insanity, regardless of who you're interacting with. And that command applies to everybody in the world. But then there's this upgrade in the command in regard to parents. Why would there be a different standard for parents than everybody else? Because parents tend to be our power persons. And so, and that word honor takes things to the next level of honoring in Aramaic would be to bring that presence of love. You've got Rakhma, so love is present in you. And now this new level of command comes in that says, bring that love into activity toward your power person, if your parent was your power person. And again, like the command with neighbor, it's got nothing to do with neighbor. It's got to do with how you maintain your own human life. And in the same way, this honor father and mother, bring the active presence of love into behavior toward, means that active present love moves through my physiology. And if I have a power person dynamic with a parent, then that heals in me. It's about how I maintain my own human life and how I step into healing. So it's a whole different level of possibility
Yeah,
when
and
you see how
yeah.
that correlates.
Yeah, and further to what you're saying there, because you and I have talked about this when we're at the retreat, but I believe that we are at the effect of what we caused being the ancestors. And so if there's an energetic resonance in my field for whatever pathology is playing out, then there's an aspect that I've resonated with that. And so by holding the true Aramaic forgiveness of unplugging the energy and getting to the root of its release, it's actually releasing it within my own mind of my own creation, my own made up story, because of course, to me now, I didn't know this before, but creation is different than the made up illusion of the pathology that plays out over lifetimes in the false self.
Exactly.
That's the replication of patterns over and over that is mostly hidden in the unconscious. And I had a session with a client the other day, and in meditation, I took her, it was actually like taking an extension cord that's within me, that's what I saw in the meditation, and actually unplugging it from the false self, and then taking the essence of my being and plugging it in right into Rakhma and Ruka Dakucha, who works with me in that energy, so the love flows right into this physical structure of which the highest identity can play through. So yeah, and so when you talk about forgiving the parents, it's actually, to me, I see it's forgiving the self, because it's all a holographic representation of my own unconscious and experiences. So in doing that, it's just opening the way for more love to come in, and then it releases the pathology. As long as you're holding on to any pathology, it will always be resonating in the made up story. And when we release it, it then makes way for the creation of love to be present, active, and conscious. So we experience the creation simultaneously as we're creating it. So, yeah. Oh, I'm just so grateful for you. You have no idea, like Michael, what's really opening up since I've come home, and yeah, it's just so thank you, thank you, thank you. Just the depth of love for you and Jeannie and everybody else on the call.
Honored and delighted, and just a slight refinement.
Yeah.
We want to keep moving in the direction of shifting the brainwash of the culture
Mhm.
away from the idea of ever forgiving anyone, ourselves or anybody else. That forgiveness is applied to the trauma, the hostility, the fear, the energy that does not belong. And so as I step into bringing love present, the trauma literally is melted. The trauma is transmuted and removed, and it's the removal of that energy of trauma that is forgiveness. The Greek idea that they fed us as forgiveness is really about pardoning, letting them off the hook. And so really tapping in and removing everything that never belonged is there's the resolution of war. There's the key to how do we put an end to this, mass insanity that has taken over so many millions of minds for literally for thousands of years.
Since the beginning, since this, and that's, I think we've all come here to remember, in the Course in Miracles, we're on a journey without distance to a place we never left. The truth is, the essence, we are still with God, but we don't know it because the mind thinks it's separate. So,
Right.
yeah. Thank you. Just
Yay.
thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
Absolutely joining you in the process. Anyone else? Any thoughts on that before we go back to the video? If so, just push that mute button and say your piece. Welcome. Glad you're here. We're kind of experimenting. If you just joined the show, we're experimenting with playing a video that was a conversation we've been talking about the last day or two from Susan's group, where we were looking at this article on how we put an end to war on the planet. So if nobody has another thought, we'll just go ahead and Miss Jeannie, if you push that play button again, we'll listen to another piece of it. We'll give it a few minutes and we'll come back. And if you have any comments as it goes along, make a note of your comments, your thoughts, and let's continue the conversation.
And Job, to me, opens the door, both in the lesson he gives of, oh, I've given direction. The resistant part of me, I'm resisting what my children might be doing. I am now in Satan, and Satan in me, the resistor that has misled me about my children, is now giving God instructions, commanding God to produce a result. And now that result has been produced, I have work to do. I've got to clean up. Hey, Carrie, welcome, young lady.
Yay.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. Ellen,
Did
were
you get
you
my
say
message?
something? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
I just want to say something. I'm going to have to leave at the peak of the hour, and I'm sorry, but Michael, I wanted to thank you deeply for your work, and I want to look deeper into the relationship between the Hebrew word ahava and racham or rachma, because in the Torah, the primary instruction is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and then it goes on Ve'ahavta, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. So when it shows up in the Younger Testament, it's an echo from Torah. And so it's been a question for me, and I know Dr. Neil Douglas Potts has a chapter in his book on the relationship between ahava and rachma. So I'll look more into that. But what you gave to me was, I've been practicing a lot of Sufism since this whole difficulty with seeing what Israel as a nation has become. And there's a huge amount about Bismillah, first in alignment with Allah, which is like Allah in Aramaic. Rahman and Rahim, the two primary qualities of Allah in Islam are Rahma and Rahim. And I'm going, well, then I need to open more to this love and compassion from the Creator. And so that's what my practice has been. And then noticing this resistance, how can I be in resistance to understanding God as love? And yet that resistance shows up as digestive issues and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really fascinated by this idea of pathology, and will continue doing the work and tracking your work as best I can. And it's so much fun for me to connect with Tim and Sue through this work. It's just been one of the gifts of this elder chapter. And the last piece I want to share is that I'm dealing with envisioning the ideal death scenario for me. Because my kids are like, you want what? I mean, they just don't even want to think about it. It's all so weird. But my sense is that it's really important for me that when I'm getting ready to leave the body, that I have people around me that are saying, go for it, girl.
All the faith, right?
This is your wedding day. And so when I was translating what you were saying about pathology into my body, I'm going, it's this belief that death is bad or that death is an end that is at cause. And if I can really let go of that mistake and accept the eternal nature of the divine, then hopefully my body can relax and allow this passage, which is natural for all of us, to be one of great blessing.
Well, I'll join in holding that blessing. And, you know, one of the things that I've observed with working with the Aramaic is that virtually every key word, every important word in Aramaic has been turned exactly backward in our Greek-based culture. Mm-hmm. And one of the key words that I hear you talking about is this word love, and the belief that love is something that God does to us, or that we do to each other, or that we give to each other, or we get from each other. And that's not an accurate representation of the Aramaic word love. The Aramaic word love represents a state of being. It's not that God loves us. God is the space of love. When we're instructed to have Rakhma, what's being said is there's a gateway in the frontal lobes of your brain that brings active present love into your physiology. And now you are the presence of love with your neighbor, with the Creator. It's not about loving you. It's got nothing to do with the neighbor and the Creator, except when they're objects of attention, if you're going to have a human life, you've got to maintain your human life. And it's Rakhma that empowers you to maintain your human life. So it's not about loving your neighbor, nothing to do with loving your neighbor. And I mean, there's so many key words. If you would, maybe you can send through Susan your email address or phone. And there's a workshop that myself and Gail Allen Kaufman did called Aramaicisms. And Aramaicisms is a term that I coined that represents our effort to bring the original Aramaic meaning to the words back, because you can't understand what anybody says if you don't know the meanings of their word. And so I'll send you a link to that 4-hour workshop. So if you give them email, phone number, what have you, make sure you get that. And of course, we've got our radio show 5 days a week, so come and play. Come and join us for the radio show.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, honored for life.
Lama and Khooba.
This is a little bit awkward, but hey, I hope it's working. I hope it's opening a different kind of space for everybody that's listening. But this idea that she was talking of Rakhma, and recognizing that it's the whole key to living a human life, and there's no such idea in the English language. There's nothing that comes out of the Aramaic through either the Greek interpretations or the Latin. It's there's nothing even relative to the truth of the meaning of that word. And so until we really can establish that there is literally in our minds a gateway, it's been theorized, and I'm starting more and more to suspect that it is perhaps the part of the brain that's called the angular gyrus, literally, that is the passageway for love, for human life to enter this human form. And it protects the perceptual mind from negative and destructive intentions, because there are basically three filters over both the frontal lobes of the brain, which is where intentions are stored, and three filters over the back of the brain where perception is stored. And when Rakhma is active, then the only quality of intention that the mind can bring forward is an intention that's keyed to love. And only one filter can be active at a time. If either hostility or fear are the active filters, then the quality of intentions that are available to the mind to use for the raw material of goals are destructive and negative. So when Rakhma is active, the destructive and negative are simply, they can't get through the filter. We're freed of those influences. And then this lady that was just talking is going to bring out the next filter, but I just thought I'd focus on that idea and see if anyone has any thoughts in that regard. And or how in your practice, as I see it, making it a habit to make sure that this filter Rakhma is set in our minds, how has that practice influenced you? Anything you share for anybody? If so, hit the mute button. Let's hear from you. If not, then let's just go ahead and play the next piece. And, we're doing this as an experiment. We'll be looking for your feedback, and we'll see if it's anything we'll do any more of. Maybe we'll, reminder, Monday, we're going to start at noon Eastern time instead of 1 o'clock. And we're going to do a full-blown mind shifters and still point breathing session. It'll be 2 hours. And if you don't have your mind shifter yet, you could put 2 numbers in the notes, and we'll give you a mind shifter. And the 2 numbers would be, pick one from the grouping 1 to 31. That would be the first number. And then the second number would be 1 to 13. The combination of numbers that you select would determine the mind shifter that we'd invite you to work on and write to prepare yourself for the workshop on Monday. So hope everybody joins us for that. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Ahava, ahava, or in Aramaic, Khooba, like Allah Khooba, God is love. I'm sure Michael worked with that.
Let me throw a couple of thoughts in there. So the frontal lobes of the brain is where our intentions are stored. The back of the brain is where perception is stored. I'll send you a link. We've got a whole page. We've talked about this a lot on our video show. So there are 2 filters, gateways, and they're correlating interactive filters. One is Rakhma, the other is Khooba. One is over perception, intentions, frontal lobes of the brain. One is over perception, the back of the brain. Together, they were called perfect love, and what they said, remember, was perfect love casts out fear. Your mind cannot generate a fear-based reality, cannot generate pathology in the presence of Rakhma and Khooba. And they're interrelated filters. If one is lost, then the other is lost. But the primary, according to Yeshua, what's the first order of business if you're going to maintain your human life? At Rakhma, when you think of any neighbor, it doesn't matter if it's the worst person you consider to be the lowest on the earth, if you go into hostility or fear, you just lost your human life. You just blew the whole thing. You can forget about the rest of the conversation if you don't have a human life. So he's like, here's what comes first. And then Khooba is how you keep your perceptual mind on track with love, so that threat and irritation are not possible products pathology is not possible from a human mind, where Rakhma and Khooba are at. You know, that's what they call the saints. And it wasn't mystical. It was like, this is a doable thing. It's a practice, but you got to get the words right.
So Rakhma and Khooba.
They're interrelated filters. One is over the frontal lobes, one's over the back of the brain. And if one goes out, the other tends to go out. Maintaining the two of them, again, was called perfect love. It keeps the mind on track where every construct that the mind generates is based in love rather than in threat, irritation, negativity, or destructiveness. It keeps the mind on track. It's how you keep your instrument in alignment with the truth of who we are created to be.
And this is an intention, and it doesn't have to be a feeling.
It's a practice. To me, it's a practice, you know, and there's a third term that comes in from the Aramaic, which was ruka de kudsha, and they're words that represent what the Greeks called the Holy Spirit, but there's nothing in the Aramaic about a disembodied spirit being. What, if you go back to the creation story, what you hear is that not that the Creator sent out His Spirit, but that the Creator sent out His breath. And it literally is our breath. You watch people when they're in trauma, you watch people in their hostility or fear, what do? They hold their breath. That's the denial of the Holy Spirit. And when that energy, when that breath can't move through us, then trauma energies that are off the mark, get locked in tissue. Now you've got physical pathology because that tissue has been assaulted by something based in hostility or fear. And holding the breath, watch people when they're in pain, when they're in trauma, when they're afraid. What do? Shut it down. The restoration of the breath, literally defined in Aramaic, feminine, it's gendered feminine, she who undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. We've got to allow that breath to reach in the cell that is in pathology in order for her to undo the pathology. Most people hold their breath in the presence of their own pathology. And it's got to be restored. And so and you know, we live in a world that tends to be based in what people call give and take, but it's actually not a give and take world in truth. It's a give and receive world. And when we start to open to receive the breath and through the whole physiology, then literally it's like the visual I use is water came down this rocky place that became the Grand Canyon, and it dissolved everything that got its Ruka de Kudsha, when she moves through your structure, dissolves everything that never belonged. When the Greeks threatened us with the denial of the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin, they had it backwards. Close, but like everything else, they turned it backwards. The denial of the breath means that the very thing that can dissolve whatever your pathology is withheld from your pathology, and now you're stuck with your pathology. So it isn't the unforgivable sin, it's that when you cut yourself off from the breath, you leave yourself stuck in unforgiveness because you don't allow the power that can process those energies out of the structure to dissolve them. So you're stuck in unforgiveness. It's not unforgivable, it's stuck in unforgiveness without breath.
Rakhmana, do you have the concept of ruka de kudsha? Are you there, Rakhmana?
Said she was gonna have to go at the top of the hour, so it's.
She looks like she's still there.
If her camera's on, but her
She may have had to
link
go
is still
back
there.
you know.
Never mind.
So
But we can continue the conversation next time she's available. Do it on the radio show, whatever.
John, do you want to say anything about this? One question I have on your behalf and my own is that, you know, if you've got a kink in your hip or you've got something going on, does that mean we're doing something wrong? We're not breathing properly or Anyway, I was imagining you might be asking that question, John, and maybe you're not.
So with John, John's going to kind of take the conversation just a little different direction. So we'll put it on hold and just see what these ideas are resonating for you all. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything to share about how the activity, either Rakhma or Khooba, or inviting Ruka into activity, if you've had any direct experience with that, if you ever seen the results. It's interesting when you go back into this conversation in the scriptures where Yeshua is discussing with some of the officials of the day, and he mentions this Ruka and these principles, and the official, church or synagogue representative doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. And Yeshua is kind of shocked about it, and he gives a method for understanding that which is invisible, and he uses the idea of the wind, and he says, well, we know the wind has been here. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from. We don't know where it went, but we know by its effects that it's been here. When you actually start to utilize your breath and you watch how your mind shifts, when you actually invite this state or this filter Rakhma to open, you'll start to see some very profound effects. And that's when you know those things are facts. Otherwise, they're just words that, what do they mean? And the whole objective is to enter into the practice of utilizing these ideas and then watching the result. So wondering if anybody's got any thoughts in that regard, any of those results that you've noticed in your world, in your life.
I'll chat again. I would like you, if you don't mind, to, and obviously having sessions with you on the table through the still breath breathing, it was very clear that Ruka was working through me and releasing the pathology that was stored in the muscle memory, and also in the other subtle area, I would say in the emotional field, and even stuff, obviously, my conscious mind would have no access to. And I would like, if you don't mind, to just review again, that is it Rakhma that comes in through the frontal lobes, and you said that is where intention is set, and then you talked about the Ruka or Kucha in the back, and can you just
not
say
quite.
that again? Okay.
Yeah, Rakhma in Aramaic is the filter over the frontal lobes of the brain, over intentions.
Okay.
So
filter.
it's a dual action thing. One, it's that filter that blocks intentions based in negativity or destruction. Only intentions key to love. So that's one of the aspects. The second one is that it's the gateway. When it's closed, and it is closed whenever hostility or fear active, there's no human life available. How many times have we looked at the atrocities that people have done and said, how could a human being, how is that even possible? And my offering is a human being can't do those atrocities. But when there's no human life when that gateway is closed, then whatever that mind's been programmed to do, whatever its power person dynamics are, will seem like natural, normal. And of course, doesn't everybody do this? So that's the frontal lobe. It's dual. And then so the Rakhma determines the quality of the intentions. And the reason that's important is because intentions are the raw material for goals. When I select a goal or I select an intention and go, am I going to do this? And I commit to it, I've turned that intention into a goal. Now it has to go through a second set of filters. One is hostility, one is fear, the other is Khooba. If hostility is active and I've set a goal, then the only data that's going to be available for building my reality is that which is based in irritation. So if hostility is active and I set a goal, it doesn't matter who it is. It can be the person I cherish the most in the world when I'm in my normal state. But all of a sudden, because my database is set for irritation, I'm going to look at them and go, you're so damned irritating. What's wrong with you? when it's just my own mindset that's happening. And so if then the second quality of if fear is active, then I can look at the least threatening person in the creation, and because fear is active in my perceptual mind, if that's the active filter, the only data that my mind can use to build my perceptual construct, my reality, is data based in threat. So I'm going to perceive the most caring, gentle person in the world as threatening to me if that's active. If Khooba, the third filter, is active, and that's the corollary to Rakhma, if that is active, then the only data my mind can use. So I will look at what could be the most distasteful, the most trauma-causing person in the world, and I'm going to be keyed into love, and the data in my mind is going to bring forward compassion and the presence of love in regard to this object of attention, rather than, if hostility or fear active, the opposite, even with wondrous objects of attention. So those two filters together in Aramaic were what were called perfect love. When they said perfect love casts out fear, what they're saying is, if Rakhma and Khooba said, it doesn't matter what you're looking at. You could be looking at somebody, cancel the thought, with their finger on the atomic bomb in your face saying, I'm going to push this. And you could build in your mind a fear-based reality. The reality that you would build would be one key to love. And it's interesting as this conversation unfolds, John, who is who Susan's addressing here, or just started to ask him, John starts to share how he was brought up in a really rough neighborhood, literally. And I was kind of surprised because it's the first time I've heard him tell this aspect of his story. He's an older gentleman. And he's like, I would have a gun and I'd kill people if they got, if they threatened my family. And then he had this opening, this out of body experience where he stepped into being. And at that point, he's like, it doesn't matter what happens. I wouldn't own a gun or a knife for loving their money. And then he goes on to talk about how he had found himself after having this opening experience, where previously he literally would have murdered somebody if they'd have been a big enough threat to him. He's like, the people who would be a threat in my neighborhood, he was brought up in a pretty rough neighborhood, he said, if I got into interaction with them, they'd just walk away. They'd just let me go. He said, it was like he was protected. And that's what the energy of Rakhma and Khooba do. If hostility and fear are active, of course, it resonates something different in people, and we end up with different results.
Yes, I understand more I don't know if it's in the Bible, but only a pure heart can see purity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
and
then
that pure heart would be one with the mindset of Rakhma and Khooba. First law, how do you get to be a human being? They say to Yeshua, what's most important? Got to have Rakhma.
Yeah.
And of course, the Greeks translated as love your neighbor. I mean, I think one of the most destructive things you could ever tell somebody who has unresolved hostility and fear is tell them to love their neighbor. Because they're going to attract a neighbor that's going to resonate their rage, their fear, their guilt, whatever's going on in them. And when they do, and they fail at quote unquote loving their neighbor, what people said love was, then now you've got a whole round of guilt building, and down the tube you go. Terrible thing to tell somebody to love their neighbor. Now, tell somebody to have Rakhma so they can be love in the presence of their neighbor. Now you've got something that's workable.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the Aramaic and the Greek. And of course, if this conversation that we're having here with this particular group is about ending war, and how are we going to do that? Well, if we live where the only energetic patterns that are active in us come from Rakhma and Khooba, then there's no energetic resonance for war, and we can put an end to it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. That really locked it in now, so appreciate it.
Anyone else, any thoughts? Anyone we haven't heard from yet? Any thoughts to add before we turn that video back on? Yeah, hoping everybody's going to join us on Monday to breathe. We do have a monthly Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing Club, and seeing as how Dr. Tim is on vacation and won't be doing the first hour of his show on Monday, actually he will be doing it for the next week. we just decided to go ahead and take everybody through a still point session. So looking forward to that. Everybody joining us. Looks like we're going to have a larger than normal group, which is cool. Jeannie, any thoughts on this conversation for you?
No, it's just, it's key and it is challenging sometimes when things are in your face to remember to reconnect, and it just takes practice.
Got to become part of the personal code. That's one of the ideas of putting it into speech, and what we speak on a regular basis. We tend to hear external. We hear someone say something, go, wow, that's interesting. And then when we start to speak it to ourselves, we can begin to integrate it into behavior. Somebody can stand over us and scream till the cows come home and do this, but it's not possible until, or not likely, until we start to integrate it into our own speech. And then, so it becomes our own external speech. Then it proceeds into what's called silent speech, where we say those words about that behavior, whatever it is. You can hear a little one practicing some words in the background here. And so when that speech is then proceeds to a silent level, and I'm saying it to myself in my own mind, if the behavior related to that speech is activated and experienced reduced stress, then it will go into what's called regulatory speech, which means it's now part of my personal code. And everybody's got a personal code. It's interesting. Lots of people who will deny aspects of their personal code. They'll do something and they'll turn around and say, well, I don't do that. It's like, excuse me, you just did. Well, yeah, but my personal code wouldn't be that. You can't do anything outside of your personal code. And the idea, the personal code evaluation at the intensive is to get a look at where the weak parts are in one's personal code. And by correcting speech, correcting the thoughts related to that speech, then the personal code changes. And all of a sudden, you wouldn't do behaviors against your own will and choice, which most people do all the time. Behaviors that they say, well, I don't want to do that. I'll never do that again. But the next time the stress is up and the chips are down, if the personal code demands it, then that behavior takes place again. And there's another reason for really practicing and working with the forgiveness process, because that's what allows us to delve into the unconscious, which is the root of most people's personal code, and clean it up. So it all ties together. And then you hear Yeshua talking about the clarity of his words, and that his words really are what activate the underlying personal code that relates to a human life. And it's in all of us. It's already there. It's just a matter of activating it. And speech is a key to that process.
Hey, Michael, can I ask a
Go
question?
for it. Absolutely. Please do.
Couple things. Been thinking a lot about speech. And my first question is do you think that the spoken word is more powerful than the thoughts?
No, the spoken, well, in terms of putting it into behavior, the spoken word, if the thought and the behavior that it's related to is experienced to reduce stress, that's what's going to put it into the personal code. But my take would be they're kind of like looking at two sides of a coin. On this side of it, I see the coin, I see George Washington. On the other side, I see, the Washington Monument. But it's really one object. So the referring to speech or words and referring to thoughts, they're the same thing. It's one object, just different aspects of it. So I would see them both as having the same impact.
Okay,
That
I
makes
was
sense?
wondering because at the intensive, there were several times that I felt the need to speak something.
Yes.
Like, because I thought that I was thinking that the actual vibrations from the voice was more powerful than the thoughts.
Well, the voice, you remember we talked about in the intensive cymatics, and that cymatics is a science of how sound creates form.
Right.
And so, yes, literally putting it into your voice box is part of what embeds it in tissue, especially the tissue, when we do the quantum stuff, it's right in that arena of the voice box, because that's where those energetic patterns are embedded by the voice. But again, there's still aspects, I would see it as they're aspects of the same thing. You can't separate one from the other. I've got a coin with the head of George Washington. Can I take the head off of the coin? No. I mean, if I take the head off of the coin, there's still a head there. The picture on it might change, but it's still there. And so speech and thought are reflections of one and the same thing. But
Right. You have to
certainly
think it
embedding it
before
in
you speak it.
physiology. Yes. And embedding it in physiology, literally from the cymatic point of view, literally is embedding that energy in tissue, which literally changes the structure of the tissue. So words spoken from Rakhma and Khooba are going to tend to shift tissue into that higher vibratory state. Words spoken from, especially you look at a lot of people when they're doing words based in hostility or fear, they're raging, yelling, screaming, and they're just driving that into their own tissue structure with no comprehension of the pain they're causing themselves by that action, because literally they're embedding chemistry in the cell, and that becomes pathology.
Right. So the other question is, how is changing our speech to put it into our personal code different from positive affirmations?
Oh, night and day. That's why we don't use affirmations in this work at all. We have a tool called a mind shifter. So remember that the mind works by resonance, and if you go back to Yeshua, he says, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. That word heart would be the unconscious. And so if let's say I carry a whole generational pattern of physical trauma and disease, but I walk around telling myself how healthy I am and how wonderful I am. Well, that affirmation of how healthy I am, if in the file, so to speak, on my mind is all kinds of disease, then what am I resonating in my physiology? I'm resonating disease. Where when you take what people would normally use as an affirmation and turn it into a mind shifter, when I start writing it, I uncover what's stored that's hidden from me, and I get to clean it out. So using the mind shifter, I look at, oh my God, look at this this file I just opened. Look at this unconscious crap that I'm carrying around. And every time I speak an affirmation about that, it's this crap that I'm resonating. So let's say if I'm filled with poverty and I go around saying I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, what resonates in me, the energy that's sent out from me is one of poverty. Whereas with a mind shifter, I bring my poverty up, I throw it out. Now go affirm your way to the stars. But if you do it prematurely, you'll produce exactly the opposite result.
It's just been coming up for me. Yeah, it does make sense. I've been thinking a lot about, I've been working on changing my regulatory speech, and it was just like, how is this different from a positive affirmation? That clarifies it perfectly.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, young lady, have a blessed one. And everybody, thank you for joining us, and have the best year yet of your eternal life. Work on your mind shifter before the show on Monday, and we'll be breathing. So looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you all. Lots of love and blessings. Take care.